Hey guys, me Farron again, and in this lesson I'm going to be showing you how to create a project and add candidates to that project. So I've already alluded to this in previous lessons, and you might already know that a project is what we refer to as the position or vacancy that you are looking to fill. So to set up your first project, navigate on the left hand side to the Projects tab. Then, if you haven't played around already, you'll probably have a blank screen here with a button to say Add New, which is the same as clicking Add New here. If not, you will see, if you have created a project and played around, you will see a listing kind of like what you see in front of you now. Before I get to this, I want to go through the steps of actually creating a project and adding candidates. All the rest of the functions that you can perform here will be covered in lesson 15, which is maintain a project. This is solely for setting up your project or creating your project and adding candidates. So I'll be clicking add new project, and then I'll get all the options to go about creating this project. So the first field is the project name, and this is visible to your candidates. So typically you would want to make it the name of the vacancy that you're looking to fill. So for example, I'll call it internal sales rep. Don't know if that's a real position, but that's what I'll be calling this one. Then the next field is to select your intro video. So we covered this previously. If you've created intro videos, you'll be able to select from the drop down one of those intro videos. I'll just choose the Swap into Whamly one. And then whenever a candidate begins their interview for this project, they will be displayed the intro video, which is usually like a welcoming message, maybe from the CEO, or it would be some instructions maybe from the line managers or head of departments explaining what's expected of the candidate in this role. All right, then the next field is open project. So this is for situations where you are always hiring for this particular position and you don't necessarily want to go and create a new project every time you're looking to fill this particular vacancy. So by enabling this option, it essentially takes away the end date for this project, which means it's always open. Candidates can always complete interviews for this project until you manually go and deactivate this particular project. So for now, I don't want that. I would like a specific set of time for a candidate to complete their interview. So before I get to the start date and end date, I just also want to mention that you've got the email notifications option. And if you enable this, then any raters you've added to this project will receive a notification when a candidate has completed the interview, which essentially lets the rater know that they've got something to go and do, essentially go and rate that candidate in the Whamly system. Typically, I like to leave that on so that my raters know that they've got something to go and do. Then, going back to the start date and end date, you can select from the calendar a start date. So I'll select today. And essentially, that means candidates will be able to begin submitting their interviews from the date you specified here. And then for the end date, I'll select it as Saturday. And what that means is candidates will have up to the end of that day that's been selected here to submit their interviews and any time in between. So if they want to do it at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, on a Sunday, whenever the case is, they'll be able to do it as long as it's within this time frame. All right, then the next option to set up is the department. So again, this is something we've touched on in previous lessons. You can go and specify the department you've set up here. I will select F&B for this one, or it could have been a sales department or any other department. I'm just going to select F&B for now. And what that does is when you're adding a rater, so let's say you had 20 users in your system or 20 raters in your system. but certain of those users have been allocated to different departments. So maybe some have been allocated to sales and some have been allocated to finance. Then, depending on the department you've selected here and the users who you've allocated to that department, we will only show you the users who have been allocated to that department. And the idea behind that is to prevent other departments from seeing candidates that actually belong to a different department. So I will go back to the settings tab. I'll go later to set up the raters. But for now, the next field I want to set up is the invitation email to use when you invite candidates to this project. So again, this is another thing we've touched on in the previous lesson on how to go set up invitation templates. But just know that once you have set those up and you click on the drop down, you'll be able to select your own customized one, or you can always just use the default WAMI one. All right, the next field then that you'll be able to set up is the send from email address. So this is something else we have covered in the past under verified emails. But what this means, when we send an invitation out to a candidate or a rejection email or an acceptance email or a reminder, typically that will come from noreply@wami.io. If you would like that to come from your own, one of your company's own email addresses, you can go ahead and set up a verified email under my organization. And then once that's been verified, again, if you're not sure how to do that, please go back to the previous lessons where we cover that. But yeah, once you've verified that, if you click on the drop down, you will then have the option to select your own organization's email address. And then whenever an email goes out from WAMI, they will receive it, and the sender address will be your organization's email address and not WAMI's. Then the last setting on this page is the reply to email address. This is an address that you can set up that if a user receives an email from, let's say in this case it was barrymaria@icloud.com, or your organization's email, and they actually reply to that email, you might want it to go to a different address. It will then use the address that you specify here as the reply to. So this is also useful for candidates to let them know who to reach out to if they do have any questions about this interview or position. And that covers all the fields that you need to set up on the first tab. The next options to set up, or information to supply to create a project, is to add raters to this project. So we've covered this a few times. Depending on the department you've selected, only the users allocated to that department will be available here to add to this project. And to actually add the raters to the project, click on the 6 dots, click and hold, and drag it across. Administrators, even though they're not allocated as raters, they automatically get that role. So if you've got an administrator who's been allocated to this department, you will also be able to drag them across. And then system managers, they apply to all departments. So any system manager you can add to a particular project as a rater. All right, once that's done, the next step is candidates, which I'm actually going to come back to. It's not required to complete this to actually launch this project, but I want to handle it separately because there's actually 2 ways to add candidates to a project, and I'd rather deal with those at the same time. Then lastly is setting up your questions that will be asked to the candidates during this particular interview. So in a previous lesson, we covered how you can add questions by using an interview guide, which is simply selecting one of these templates that you've already created. So just to show you that, I'll click on the HR manager. Now it's going to fetch all the questions and the timings that were set up previously in your interview guides. And again, if you want to change the wording slightly, you can do that. So just add 3 question marks for now. You can add more questions. So, what's up? Horrible questions, I know, just to show you what's possible. And again, you'll be able to set up the preparation time, which is the amount of time a candidate has from first seeing the question before they actually have to start answering the question. Again, this is in seconds. So if you want to add 3 minutes preparation time, the value you would enter is 180, which is 3 times 60. Then the next column you have is the answer time, and this is the amount of time in seconds that the candidate has to actually answer the question that you've typed up here. So again, we've covered this a bit in the interview guide section or lesson. You can go back and get additional input there if you would like. Just some other things to note while we're here. You do have a time estimator. So based on the time you've allocated here, if a candidate was to use all that time, then this is how long it would take them to actually complete this interview. If you selected the wrong template by accident, you can click clear questions and you can select a different template. Or if you want to type out questions on the fly, you don't have any template set up, you can click create your own and then start typing them in. Just add what? All right, and one more. So just to show you, you can also rearrange questions by clicking on the 6 dots, clicking and holding and dragging it up or down. If you want to remove a question, you can click on the 3 dots and select delete question. Once you're ready, you can then either save this as a draft if you have an intention of coming back later and completing some more questions. You can do that. So I'll click save as a draft. I'll then go down. There's my internal sales rep position. If I want to continue working on it, click on the 3 dots, click edit project, and it will take me back to where I was. If I'm happy with everything and I actually want this to go live, I can then go and click activate. Now that I've activated this project, here I see it on the list down here. You can see it's been allocated to the department. And then the next thing we would want to do is actually get candidates onto this project. So like I mentioned, there's 2 ways to do this. The first way, if you go to view and edit project and go to candidates, you can add candidates here by entering their email, their first name, their last name, and their mobile number. So this is useful for when you know who your candidates are, you have their information, and you would like to have it that this project can only be accessed by candidates who you've added via this list here. So this would essentially be used in situations for maybe higher profile positions where you don't want just any random person getting in here. And the moment you add them here and activate the project for the first time, it will then send them an invitation. And the invitation they will get is based on what you selected on the email template to be used when inviting candidates. So that's the one way to do it. Another way that you can do it is if I go to this project, you'll see this option called copy project link. If you click that, it's going to paste a link into your copy paste section. And if I was to go and paste that into a browser, it essentially will open up that interview and allow anybody with this link to go and self-register for this interview. So that's particularly useful when you don't know who your candidates are going to be. For example, you post a job opening on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, something like that. So you don't know who your potential candidates are going to be, but you would still like them to self-register for the interview. In that scenario, you would use the copy project link, post it on your job board, on social media, wherever else you think it might be useful. And anybody who clicks that link will then be able to enter the email address, enter the information, and get into that particular interview. So that's how you go about creating your first project, how you go adding candidates to that project. And in a future lesson, lesson 15, I'll be going through additional tasks that an administrator can perform on a project. I hope that makes sense, and I'll see you in the next lesson.